Anything is possible. New freezer, it's a lot of them.
Hey, Denise.
Hey, how are you? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me. I feel like I know you because I've been following along on your or on your LinkedIn for so long.
Likewise, I've been following what you guys are doing. It's really incredible.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for making some time on a busy Friday. You've been watching it all from the sidelines. I love Partake Foods and everything that you guys are about. Luckily this is episode 10, and what we do on Stick With Your Dreams is we showcase really rockstar badass founders who are reinventing and disrupting the CPG space and building next generation brands. And, really excited to hear a little bit more about your story, and appreciate you making the time.
Of course, you sent me like 10 reminders and I still didn't pick up on the fact that I was an IG live. So I'm fresh from a workout, like working from my bedroom. So apologize. I thought I was a dial-in, although you said 10 times it was an Instagram live. So forgive me, but I'm happy to be here and excited to talk more.
No problem at all. No problem at all. So look, super casual. I think, the goal is to really just, you know how challenging this industry is. And I think we'd just like to share a little bit about, your founding story, learning, I saw that you initially were working at Coca-Cola and FedEx, but with just square one, how did you really kick off your career and start to trend towards Partake?
Sure thing. So I am from North Carolina originally. First person in my family to go to college, went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And what was ingrained in me from my parents was go to corporate America, go get a job where you can get a pension, max out your 401k, and don't ever leave until they tell you to go home. And so I did that. And so I worked at a bunch of like Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 companies. I spent most of my career at Coca-Cola, but I also worked at FedEx and Altria, always in a variety of sales roles. And honestly, I didn't ever, I'd always had like a side hustle. I had a ticket brokering business once and like an eBay arbitrage business, but never thought I would be like a full-time entrepreneur. And I think the universe, or it was just very serendipitous in my experience at Coke. I was there about 8 years. And the last couple of years, I got pregnant with my daughter and didn't feel great about selling Coke, Diet Coke, or Sprite, but had a chance to move into their venturing and emerging brands group where I got to support amazing brands like Honest Tea and Zico coconut water and learn more about the entrepreneurs and their founding stories. And then when I had a personal issue, it really gave me the confidence to go out and try to make a go of it.
Where I've seen the biggest breakthroughs is when people are solving problems to really build brands, as opposed to just, you see a lot of people jump in the space, they get excited about CPG and food and beverage. It's really, fantastic. But, I really want to dive into the story with Vivienne and your daughter in a little bit because it's awesome. But even in those early days, I noticed you went to ASU, and I'm assuming you studied logistics because or you focused a lot on that type of a background, then went to FedEx. How did you really transition from, what you were studying and focused on in college to going to work at even, Coke in their emerging brands group?
Sure. So when I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I ended up switching my major a few times and ended up graduating with a degree in interpersonal communications because I figured whatever I did, I was going to have to talk to people. So I went to work at Altria, which is Philip Morris USA. I grew up in the tobacco belt and really didn't have as much of a conscious reckoning with that as I do now. I'm embarrassed to say that I work there, but it provided amazing sales training. And so worked at Altria selling Philip Morris products in a sales role. And I think now looking back on it, I loved consumer products. I just couldn't get down with the product that I was selling. So I was like, well, maybe I like supply chain. So I went to Arizona State and got, excuse me, an MBA while I was working full time still, and thought that I would move into supply chain and logistics. And so I went to FedEx after that and did like a hybrid supply chain sales role. Realized I actually don't like supply chain at all, and that I like consumer products. I just needed to be selling a product and a brand that I felt better about. At the time, I was actually an avid Coca-Cola drinker, and I moved over to a sales role at Coke and had a variety of roles there. And as I became more conscious of what I was putting into my body and what types of brands I wanted to support and work on, that's what caused me to move over to the VEB group.
Got it. So fun fact, I don't know if you know this, I used to work for a guy named Jesse Itzler who was early on Zico and was really involved for 2 summers selling Zico and building the brand and, with the Coca-Cola transaction. So fun little story there. He was amazing. One of my mentors and a reason that I'm even in the space. So
Very cool. His book is awesome. I read it on a trip a couple years ago, and it's fantastic for an early CPG founder.
the Living with the Seal or Living with the Monks or the
Oh,
other book.
you know, I'm thinking about when you said Zico, I started thinking about Mark Rampola's book. So my husband actually
Right.
just mentioned he wanted to read Jesse Itzler's book, Living with the Seal. But no, Mark
Gotcha.
Rampola has a great book that is a really good tool for early stage entrepreneurs.
Yes, yes. I still need to read it, but I've heard it's fantastic. Anyway, so I'd love to hear a little bit about working at, I mean, Coca-Cola, one of the biggest and most successful CPG brands, beverage brands in the world. Did you move to Atlanta, or were you at HQ, or what was it like working, you know, at a in a corporate environment like that?
I actually worked remotely the entire time. So at the time we were living in Chicago. My husband took a new job that brought us to the New York area. So I live in Jersey City, New Jersey now. So I'd always work remotely, but I was traveling a ton, on the road a ton. It was an amazing experience. I got to a real crash course in like the importance of building a brand, the importance of maintaining the integrity of a brand, and how brand is more than just like packaging. It's every single touch point that a consumer has with your company. And so I learned a ton about brand. I think there was, you know, things that I took from that experience like that, and having processes, but also things that I think we left behind when I started Partake. Some by choice, like, you know, I don't love the hierarchy and the trackers to have trackers and the calls to like a bazillion conference calls. And then some that I left behind, not by choice, but because of lack of resources, like the fancy focus groups and like the very fancy, expensive marketing campaigns. We just didn't have the money for that in the early days, or even now for Partake.
Working for a brand like Coca-Cola, what are some of the like values or even just key learnings that you were able to apply to Partake? Because when you work like for a brand like that, I just feel like there's so much that can transition and be applicable when you're creating your own from scratch.
Sure thing. So I think I learned the importance of quality and consistency. So even from the earliest days of Partake, it was important to me that we were working with a manufacturer who I felt could maintain the product, the integrity of our product, and really scale with our business, because we wanted consumers to have a positive experience every single time that they tried our product, and a consistent experience. You know, from a brand perspective, it was just really thinking about every single consumer facing material. Like when you're early and you don't have a lot of resources and you don't have a lot of money, like it's easy to skimp on the, you know, the social media posts or the email that you're sending out. But I think every single interaction that you have with a consumer leaves a mark on their brain about who you are and who your brand is and what you stand for. So just being really deliberate about every communication that we have with our consumers.
I couldn't agree. Any experience, like whether it's any content that you're putting out across channels, the product itself, the packaging, I feel like oftentimes I see brands that just cut corners. But the brands that are really like legacy brands that sustain and are around in 10 years, think about every single touch point or interaction that the brand has digitally, in person, in retail. So that's awesome. And back to your consistency, the comment. You know, I think about these legacy brands, when you know exactly what you're going to get and it doesn't change or alter at all, that's mind share that a customer, you know, Coca-Cola exists in that mind share, and you know exactly. I don't think I've ever had an experience with Coca-Cola that hasn't been what I was expecting, and it's the value prop is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's really cool. And you worked in multiple groups at Coca-Cola while you were
Yeah,
there?
I had the fun experience of working in venturing and emerging brands, but the less glamorous experience of working on the vending team. I supported our national healthcare business. I spent a lot of time doing multicultural marketing on some regional chains in the Midwest. And so always sales or marketing related, but definitely several different roles.
So really interesting. I guess my question to you is, when you look at what emerging brands are doing today versus big companies like Coke, Pepsi, Nestle, Unilever, why aren't they often, they can, but why aren't they able to create as many brands in-house as to compete with some of the new brands that are taking market share?
No, I think one of the things is consumers are really savvy now and they can see through the BS. And so a lot of times what makes a brand special is the story of the founder, or the story and the mission and the commitment to the social mission that a big company just can't recreate. So I think a lot of it is that. I think big companies, like when you look at Coke's distribution system, like a small brand just needs a lot more nurturing than I think a lot of big companies are set up to build. And so like, they're delivering Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, which is going in huge quantities. Whereas like, a brand we had when I was there was Hubert's Lemonade. Like that brand needs a lot more attention. And it also probably needs to be in a different channel of business than maybe where you're selling Coke, Diet Coke, and Sprite. And so I just don't think that they have the resources in place to be able to support very small emerging brands. And then I think also consumers want to support small companies and they want to nurture those companies, and big companies just can't create those brands authentically in-house.
I also think that spot on, and also these companies are being judged quarterly, right? So for somebody to take a huge R&D initiative and make a bet on, X product, Y product that really goes against the grain, that's substantially different than what they've done in the past, is kind of a scary proposition. So really interesting. All right, so you're at Coke. You're in an amazing, group with venturing brands. That's really exciting. So were you investing in founders? Were you taking meetings with new brands? Were you guys building in-house, like all the above?
So we were either investing in or acquiring outright. And so I was the director of national sales for everything non-brick and mortar. So I got to sell Zico coconut water to Microsoft, and I got to take Hubert's Lemonade to all kinds of like cool juice bars around the country and help get Honest into McDonald's Happy Meals. And so it's fantastic. It was like the best job ever. It was so fun. It felt entrepreneurial, but you also had like a lot of the infrastructure and support that comes with working at a big company.
Got it. And then I read that soon, it was 2016 or 2017, you really started Partake and were selling cookies out of your trunk, which is really badass. And I'd love to hear how the transition went from, really in a comfortable corporate job, Coca-Cola is an incredible company, Fortune 50, like you said. How do you go and transition to, that's a pretty big risk to go, venture out on your own?
Sure. So my daughter, Vivienne, who may come in and make an appearance at some point, she's 5
Nice.
now. First birthday, we learned that she has several food allergies. So she's allergic to most tree nuts. She's allergic to eggs, corn, and bananas. I was very frustrated with the options that existed. I'm not vegan or gluten-free, and so I'd always equated those words with healthy. And as I started to turn over packaging in stores, I was like, this is actually worse than the normal counterpart. It was full of gums and starches and sugar and all kinds of weird ingredients I didn't understand.
And these were allergy-free products, correct?
I was ideally looking for top 8 allergen-free products. And so didn't feel good about the nutritional quality. When I found stuff I felt good about nutritionally, I felt like kids are the most honest critics. Like she would literally like refuse to eat stuff. And then from a brand perspective, I started to think about how like some of her most fond childhood memories would be tied to food, whether it was like play dates or holidays or birthday celebrations. And it sucks for people who can't participate because of a dietary restriction. And while a lot of the brands that existed provided a safe solution, it wasn't one that I think a kid or an adult even would be excited to share with their friends or like proud of. And it's like, why isn't there a brand that makes products that taste good, that have ingredients you feel good about sharing with your family, but cool enough that someone without food allergies would actually choose to like willingly eat it. And so our nanny, Martha, the summer of 2016, after we discovered the food allergies, was like, your daughter has the most boring diet ever. Why don't you give her anything fun? And I explained all the things I just shared with you. And she's like, you should start a food company. So Martha actually has a small equity stake in Partake, and she's really
awesome.
Catalyst behind me starting the business. She would go to Whole Foods and bring back ingredients and be like, why don't we make something? Let's make something. And just like really pushed me to get out there and do it. And that was summer of 2016. It took about a year to find, we ended up having to enlist the help of a professional to bring the vision to life from a product.
Right. So were you just cooking, were you guys baking product yourselves? Was it always cookies, or was it all sorts of baked goods?
So it was just cookies to start, because one of the other things I was like, if we're going to do this, I want it to be a scalable business. And so I immediately started looking for manufacturers, because starting a business was already out of my wheelhouse. Manufacturing products at the commercial level was like so far out of my wheelhouse.
Totally.
And so I needed to find an allergy-friendly manufacturer we could work with, and we found an amazing partner that we're still with, and they had the capability to make cookies and a few other things. And I was like, well, who doesn't love cookies? And so that's how we started with cookies.
Were most of the allergen-free products like owned by big multinationals, or were they independent companies that you were competing against or trying?
kind of like two ends of the spectrum. There's one that's owned by a huge multinational. There's another that's pretty large. And then the rest are very much like, I feel like regional mom and pop brands that are, you know, have a presence in different parts of the country or in a lot of independent natural stores.
Got it. Super interesting. I feel like it's a category that I just haven't seen a lot of innovation or brand ownership in. So it's amazing. You know, it seems like you guys are right on trend and doing a great job. Okay, so walk me through this. So you guys have a minimum viable product. Did you create the product and then leave? Did you first get an account before you made the jump? Like, how did that happen?
So one of the other things I did after I had the idea, it was very serendipitous. We were in line at the zoo on a Saturday afternoon. I was telling my husband, like, I think I'm going to do this. The person in line in front of us at the zoo was like, sounds like you have an idea. There's a small business contest in New Jersey. It was a Saturday and the applications were closing like on a Monday, and he was like, you should apply. And I incorporated the business. It was Vivi's Life LLC because my daughter's name is Vivi and I wanted to make her life easier. And I entered the pitch competition and we won. And so that was fantastic because it helped validate my idea. It gave us $10,000 in cash, but it also came with some local press. So I had to tell my employer what I was doing because the last thing I needed was them to see me on the local news, like Woman Starts Allergy-Friendly Company. And so I was given the ultimatum, like, you can do whatever you want in your spare time, but once you have a product that you're selling to retailers, you got to go. So I spent a year moonlighting, working like early mornings, late nights, weekends on bringing Partake to life. And then in August of 2017, we launched with 3 SKUs of cookies. I left my career at Coca-Cola. We were bootstrapped and self-distributing, and I would just deliver cookies to natural food stores in New York.
Awesome. It's awesome. Who was your first retailer that you guys launched in?
First retailer is Organic Basic Food in Hoboken. So I live in Jersey City, and so it was our local grocery store. And then there was a deli underneath my husband's office, and he would go in every day like, my wife has this crazy idea. And the guy was like, you know, whenever you have product, bring it here. And then they took it. And so we work with both of them still.
It's awesome. That's awesome. It's funny because I just feel like for us, I remember our first retailer too, and it's for them to believe in you and create that foundation is really amazing. So you're in a couple stores. Is it flying off the shelves, or what happens in the first month or two?
So from August to December, my goal was get 50 stores. So I think we ended up with like 47 natural food stores. I'm demoing like every single night of the week to see like
all independents, just in New York and New Jersey. Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Really have the capital to expand much on that. And I wanted to make sure that other people besides me thought it was an idea and that people were going to buy the product. And so I wouldn't say it was flying off the shelves, but our reception was definitely strong enough that I felt like we were on to something. And so I was demoing a ton to learn who our consumer was. And I did that all the way in May of 2018. And we went into one region of Whole Foods, went into Wegmans at that point.
Amazing. Amazing. I will say that first year in retail, like myself and my co-founder did the same thing. It's so important to be handing out product, converting on shelf, getting people to try it, actually hearing the feedback. Because oftentimes you can get kind of separated from what's really happening in the retail environment versus and how to tweak and iterate and fix your product. So Wegmans and Whole Foods, and that's where you really probably got your first distributor, or maybe you go direct, but was that UNFI and then you kind of transitioned into, you guys are now in 2,700 plus stores?
Yeah, so we baby stepped it again. So at that point, we family capital, and we specifically sought out retailers where we could have access to data for free, and we could demo because we knew that we had a high conversion rate when people actually tried the product. And so we did that for almost a year, and then the summer of 2019 we raised a seed round and we expanded distribution a bit more.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And so here's my question: with COVID-19 and demos being such an important part of your business, how are you guys rethinking your merchandising and marketing strategy in store?
Sure. So we've definitely gone a bit more digital. And I think we've also seen it's been a very bitter for our business because with all of the racial unrest and discussion around systemic racism that exists in our country, like being one of the few Black owned food brands in the space, we've gotten so much amplification of our business. And so we've seen a huge lift in sales. And so we're trying to use all the good that's coming our way to put some more good in the world, whether it's by partnering with nonprofits that support food insecure families, or whether it's supporting other Black and brown and women founded companies. So yeah, it's been a really weird time for our business, but a really fun one.
It's really amazing. I mean, awesome to see just the business continue to thrive and succeed in this environment. There are a lot of companies that are really having a tough time and struggling as well right now. So here's an interesting question. Like, I felt I'd had to deal with the same challenge. How is that you're initially when you launched Partake, did you have any anxiety or fear about kind of making that massive pivot in your career? And you'd spent 8 years building a foundation at Coca-Cola, and you'd really accomplished your goals and really been a success in corporate America. How do you, was it very much so supported by your family? Were colleagues and friends thinking, oh my God, Denise is crazy. I can't believe she's launching this cookie company. How did you deal with that kind of that noise?
I think the colleagues and friends probably thought I was crazy, although they were outwardly supportive. My family, like biggest cheerleaders ever now, but my parents, I will say, were not excited when I told them I was going to leave my secure corporate career to go sell cookies out of my car.
That's really hard, by the way, when you kind of have to go against the grain of your parents who want the best for you. So that's really impressive.
That part was challenging. I will say it like wore on me personally for them to. So I tried not to. Like, I really believed in what we were doing, and it's so personal to me because of my daughter's experience with food allergies. I tried to block out the noise. So I didn't talk to a ton of people because, like, unless someone's done it before, a lot of times they just don't understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur or to be particularly like such an early stage entrepreneur. So I just was like head down and had like a very small, like personal advisory board of like a couple friends and family members that I would talk to about what was going on, but really just tried to like keep my head down and do the work.
I think that's where most people typically will give up, is that first 16 to 24 months where you're trying to figure out product market fit. You don't really understand the industry, and your product and your pricing and packaging are kind of all over the place. And it really comes down to what's driving you and why are you in this. And it obviously shines through with you have a mission and you're solving a problem that's really, important to you personally. So it's awesome. I guess another question I'd love to hear is, really competitive climate. There's been a lot of capital that's come into the space, but this is a very capital intensive business. So when you look at other founders and try and give advice to others, how do you think about bootstrapping versus raising capital, and when's the right time, and how do you really select your investors?
So for us, when we looked at bootstrapping versus raising outside capital, I felt a very personal weight with the idea of taking other people's money, particularly at the friends and family stage, because like most of our friends and family are not wealthy people. So I wanted to prove things out as much as I could and get things as far as I could before I took anyone else's capital. I think it slowed our growth. So we launched in 2017, and it took until January 2020 for us to hit 500 stores. But I feel like now we're in a place where we can really put our foot on the gas. I feel confident in our team. We have the capital that we need. I also knew that being a woman and a person of color, like raising money wasn't going to be easy. So I wanted to get as much traction as I could so the numbers speak for themselves. So for me, it was about getting as far as we could with as little capital as we could. But now that we've brought some investors in, I feel so grateful for the investors that we have on board, because I think, when I look at what's important to me, I want their values, and like I want them to believe in the mission of the brand. Like, while like we're here to generate a return for our investors, I want to make sure that we're with a group of people who believe in our mission or are going to support our mission. And yeah, people that I actually like investors. Like having investors is kind of like a marriage. Like you're going to be with these
family, and these are your new extended family.
Yeah, so you need to be able to have the easy conversations, but you need to be able to like feel comfortable having the ugly, not fun conversations with these people too.
I think one of the harder things about the space too is you have all these headlines and people are just, oh my God, this company raised $5 million, $10 million. And I actually think raising money early on can kill your brand, kill your company, because you need to figure out, you need to bootstrap to product market fit. And a lot of people want, a cushy salary. They want, the infrastructure, they want a team. But like we felt the same is in the beginning, we self-funded and kept it very lean until I didn't want to take money from people until I was like, this is a real company. We know what we're doing here. So from all the people that I've, chatted with in the space, I've seen that as a constant trend. Bootstrap as long as you possibly can until you have real velocities that prove that you're succeeding, and real distribution, and then really scale the business. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, as we wrap this up, I guess what I'd love to hear a little bit about is the long-term vision for Partake. Where is Partake 5-10 years from now? What's that mission that you really would like to accomplish with the brand and the incredible work that you've already done?
Sure thing. So, as much as I'd love to believe that people can live off of cookies, I don't think I think that will probably innovate.
I could probably do that.
Personally, I probably could as well. And we're going to focus on cooking more. We have a pumpkin spice flavor coming out for the fall. We have another seasonal coming out. One of the other things I learned in my experience at Coke was you can do a lot with one product. Like you look at Coca-Cola, they're selling 7.5 ounce cans and 20 ounce cans and 2-liter bottles. So I think there's a ton of spacing, but I also believe that Partake has the potential to be a brand that you can find in nearly every aisle of your grocery store. And I think, our plan is to always stay true to our mission, which is make products that taste good, that have ingredients you feel good about giving your family, and that are top 8 allergen free. So as many people as possible can eat them safely.
Amazing. And any up and coming announcements? You mentioned pumpkin spice, so that's awesome.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but we have a new
all good, no worries.
that's not cookies that will be launching on our website this fall. So stay tuned for that. It should be out in September. And then we have our seasonal cookies that are coming out.
Amazing. And then any last tips or advice for people trying to build businesses in the space in that early scrappy period of time, or just considering quitting their job to go build a brand?
Sure. So as a warning, it's hard. I thought I was a scrappy, intense person, but I don't think I've taken a day off since I've had the idea for Partake. It's a lot of work, and it's not the glamorous stuff that most people see. It's like you mentioned the press release about the funding and expanding the team and the fancy stuff, but 95% of the time is head down, doing the work, executing against the plan. So it's a lot of work, but I couldn't imagine myself doing anything different. And if it's something you're interested in, I think just get started. People are so often caught up in making sure everything's perfect and a very splashy fancy launch and all these things that get the product into the market, get product market fit, talk to your consumers, continue to iterate, and just get going if it's something that you're passionate about.
I love it. Well, Denise, this was amazing. I know how busy you are, so thank you for taking some time out of your day and sharing the story. I'm going to keep a lookout for some of the new products you're launching, and really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you virtually, and I hope that we have a chance to meet in person at some point.
Likewise. Great to finally meet you. Thanks again.
Bye.